السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. مساء الخير جميعا. أهلا بكم في برنامج نيوكاسل مع وليد. نهاية السنة طبعا معنا ضيف مميز، الأستاذ طبعا الصحفي الإنجليزي سيمون ماكيه، نرحب فيه. طبعا ضيفنا حضر سابقا في الصيف في فترة آيزك وانتقالات نيوكاسل في الفترة الصعبة في نهاية سوق الانتقالات. نرحب طبعا في مرة ثانية. راح نتكلم اليوم عن آخر الأخبار الموجودة في نادي نيوكاسل ومن مدينة نيوكاسل. كثير من الأمور التي نريد أن نناقشها اليوم. طبعا سعيد بالإجابة لأي أو سوف يعني نجاوب إن شاء الله كل أسئلتكم اللي راح تسألونها هنا في الشات. Ladies and gentlemen, we would like to welcome Simon McKie from England, which is a guest of our show, and this is second coming, and it's an honor. Welcome, Simon.
Hi, how's it going? Okay.
Yes, I'm alright. And at the beginning, I would like to pass my congratulations on your new position. As we see all in LinkedIn today, writer, feature writer at Secret Media Middle East. What you can tell us about that and why it's secret?
Yeah, it's not really a secret. It's more of a the title of it is that basically it's hidden gems in the Middle East, and it's sort of in my position is to write about them. So I'm focusing on Abu Dhabi, which you kindly introduced, and yeah, no, it's a very, very exciting role. And yeah, the basis of it is just writing about Abu Dhabi, what to do here, events, restaurants, sort of anything in the hospitality sector, different sport, whether it be cricket, football. So yeah, it's a very diverse topic group that I work with. But no, it's very, very exciting, and yeah, no, very happy to start and very happy to recently move to the Middle East here in Abu Dhabi.
Have you? I know it's early, but have you started a fan club for Newcastle, same as Dubai and Abu Dhabi?
No, but I probably should, shouldn't I? It seems all the Newcastle fans are in Dubai at the moment, but yeah, I haven't come across many Newcastle fans in Abu Dhabi, unfortunately. Just the one. I play football on a Monday night, and there's one Newcastle fan. But no, I think they're all up over in Dubai.
Great, Simon. Wish you all the luck. Simon, we were going to talk about many stuff, and please feel free to add any topic you like. Let's start in soft topics before the hard ones. Everybody talking about Newcastle position in the table. It's 14th now after the Boxing Day end.
Yeah,
and it's different from fan to fan, but I want to take your view on it. I know it's 14th, but it's only 6 points from the position number 4. Yeah. So why the fan are most of the fan worried about this matter?
It's a really good question. I'm personally not in the camp of being concerned about Eddie Howe's position. I'm very much a supporter of his. I'm very much, in the camp that he deserves at least minimum till the end of the season. There's obviously a bit of concern with the way we've been playing recently, mainly away from home, which you can't argue with. We have been poor away from home. I think, the two performances that come to mind straight away is West Ham away and Brentford away, where that was a bit concerning because it's probably the first time, and I'm sure there were other games over the last 4 years since Eddie's been in his position, but it was the first time I've been a little bit worried about players, not necessarily, I wouldn't say not working hard, but it's when you probably question their desire. You look at the Sunderland game, there were red flags on that performance as well. Did they have as much desire as Sunderland go on and win the game. And that's not what Newcastle have been for the last 4 years. You know, we've been that team that have been gritty and hard to beat, and you know, even played a little bit of the dark arts, you know, in some way. But I can understand why there's concern. But I think personally, for me, it all comes down to what happened in the summer in the transfer window. It just feels like, I would say Elanga and Jacob Ramsey, Anthony Elanga and Jacob Ramsey, probably the two that they just haven't hit the heights. And it feels like there's a few players in that team that it's going to take them a while to get up to the speed of playing for Newcastle United.
But Simon, the only player he left is Isaac only. Is it the reason behind this fluctuating between of the performance?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there have been some theories that, you know, Isak was obviously that first line of press. You know, people have said that Voltemada doesn't necessarily have that in his locker to press like Isak did in Newcastle. You know, I don't think so. I think players like Joe Linton haven't been great this season. You know, and I know he's been left out of the team, and I know he's had an injury recently, but I don't think he's hit the heights he hit last season. I think the last few games, Tonali, you know, Sandro Tonali, who I think is up there with the best of them in Europe in that central midfield position, he hasn't quite in the last couple of weeks hit those heights. You know, Anthony Gordon, it feels like he chooses his games at the moment. You know, it feels like there's only a handful of players, I think, who have hit their heights that they did last season and the season prior to that. So, yeah, I think you can't just blame obviously the players that have come in. You know, it's a team game and they have to take collective responsibility. But having said that, I think that, you know, I just felt that, you know, those players we needed to strengthen in those areas, in that wide area, in that central midfield position. And it just feels like those two players that we've brought in haven't quite hit the ground running. You know, and I think as well, what we have to appreciate is that we're playing midweek again. We're playing Champions League football. So there is always going to be a strain on the squad. But it feels like we've got a bigger squad this season, which we do. But yeah, it's hard to understand where it's going wrong. But I do think a problem is the recruitment. I just think some of those players just haven't hit the ground running as I think probably a lot of people thought they would.
Usually, I am a bit selfish and starting my question first, as I'm excited to have an answer and try to get. But here, my friend Andrew, some comments, so he will be biased here and comment on them. Andrew saying, we are playing 3 games a week. It's cause and effect. The way he's talking, he will leave at the end of the season as BIF moving quickly on and in the field. We'll come to that, of course, Andrew, talking about Eddie Howe. We are not ruthless in all aspects of the club, Isaac. The main reason, it's been an underwhelming season, but look how close we are to the top 5. So it's Andrew. What do you think of Andrew? Opinion beside Eddie Howe situation, which we're going to talk later.
Yeah, he's right in the sense of as I just that those midweek games are going to cause a strain on the squad. You know, I think as I said, I don't want to keep repeating myself, but I think we have got a big enough squad now where we could probably handle that. You know, if you think about the fact that we can play Elanga or Murphy, we can play Barnes or Gordon, we could play Voltemada or Wissa, and I know Wissa's just coming back from injury, but you know we've got 6 players in that front line, and then if you think about, we've got Ramsey, Willock, Lewis Miley, who can play in that midfield, and then we've got a back four. You know, if everyone's fit, we've got Trippier, Lewis Hall, Tino Livramento, Byrne, Shaw, Chow, Botman. You know, so injuries have been a problem, especially in the back line. You know, having Sven Botman out, you know, and Dan Byrne and, you know, Lewis Hall and Tino Livramento, who I think are critical. I think they're so significant to how we play, and our performance level, I think, goes up when they play. They were obviously had injuries this season. So, we have to take that into account as well, is that we haven't had a full fit squad. But then again, which club does these days? There's always injuries now in for most teams. So, but I still think there's a big enough squad to cope with that midweek game. And in terms of his opinion on the being away just off the top 4 for 5 points, that just says it all, doesn't it? It just shows where the league is at the moment. A lot of teams are dropping points. It feels like only Arsenal and Man City are the two that are staying consistent. Obviously, Aston Villa have been on a run recently, and they've played well. But at the start of the season, they were struggling a little bit. So anything can happen. All it takes is a run. This happened. I remember this happened last season. We didn't start particularly well, and then we went on a really, really. I think we went on a 10-game winning streak, if I've got that right. So if we get a run together, we find ourselves in the top 6, top 5, and then no one will be talking about Eddie Howe anymore. So football can change like that, as we all know, don't we?
Of course. Great answer, Impact, Simon. So you mainly talking the reason mostly is the starting of the season, and especially the injuries now. So away games stats under this criteria, it's because the injuries you see, not because have difficulties or extra difficulties in away games.
Yeah, it's probably a combination of both, isn't it? I mean, I don't know what you think, but the injuries are always going to be a problem for any team. The concern is, and this is where I probably do agree with some Newcastle fans, is that you can't perform like that away from home. That can't carry on. And like I said, this isn't me criticising Eddie. This isn't me being starting to join that camp of wanting Eddie out. But those away games were just really, really poor. I mean, as I said, the 3 that come to mind are the Sunderland, Brentford, and West Ham. I think the derby in particular, that was a really painful one, because that was one where, I've grown. I've watched a lot of Newcastle teams in my life, and I've watched a lot of teams go up against Sunderland. And I remember watching teams, and I always knew that sounding cynical, but I always knew we were going to get beat, purely because of the team that we put out. And it wasn't due to their it wasn't due to their ability, and it wasn't due to their quality. It was purely because I knew a lot of those Newcastle players didn't want it. But on the flip side, I'd watch teams go out against Sunderland who weren't as good as some of those players. So I'm talking about the Kevin Nolans, the Andy Carrolls, the Jonas Gutierrez, Enrique, the Steve Harpers, the Stephen Taylors. I was at the game where we beat Sunderland 5-1. And those were the players that were playing. Now, you can't tell me they were better than Yohan Cabaye, Papi Cisse, Demba Ba, David Santon, Colaccini. They weren't as good as them, but they wanted it more. They wanted it a bit more than them. And that was where I was probably most disappointed with that Newcastle team, because I always thought we had both, which I still think we do, but we've got that fight, but we've also got that quality, and you put that together. And then, on that particular occasion against Sunderland a few weeks ago, it just looked like they wanted it more. And I think that's what's probably hurt Eddie the most. And I think it's probably what's lost him a little bit of credit. So in answer to your question, I think in terms of the away performances, I do think that is the biggest problem. And I think that Sunderland one is probably the one that highlights it.
The Sunderland game, we lose it. Is it because, my opinion, we were, or Eddie Howe or the team, were extra careful, extra careful. They give much more respect for Sunderland. I apologize for this.
Mm-hmm.
And to the McKims, I apologize. And I see Newcastle in Champions League do much better. So I'm trying to, is it because the players, Newcastle, excited about the Champions League, or the team goal is the Champions League more than Premier League? Is it because more revenue for better revenue and the bonuses and stuff. Or is it because some says other teams in Europe doesn't know how to play with Newcastle, unlike the Premier League, which they know how to stop Newcastle, especially with Eddie Howe, have kind of one plan. Yeah. So what do you think is the reason?
Yeah, I mean, I really hope it's not the money situation, because then that would not be good. But I mean, it could be a combination of all of those things. I mean, I think that Sunderland game, if I'm being honest with you, I think both teams weren't great. I think Sunderland, I think they had one effort on goal. I know we didn't have an effort on goal till the second half, but it was the quality of football in that derby was pretty poor from both sides. It took an own goal from, unfortunately, our £70 million striker, who put it in the wrong net. But it just felt like Sunderland had that edge in terms of it was a stadium of light. It's the first derby in the Premier League in what is it? Almost 10? Was it 10 years or something? I think 9 years in the Premier League. They had the crowd, they had that momentum behind them, but I think a 0-0 probably would have been a fair result. I don't think Sunderland necessarily deserved to win it. As I said, I think they probably showed a little bit more grit. But we probably did show them too much respect, and I think we also did play on the back foot, which again isn't an Eddie Howe team, and that's why Eddie Howe's probably been, over the last year or so, has shown a slightly different side to him, in my opinion, where we've gone 1-0 up and we've retreated back, which I'm not the biggest fan of, if I'm being honest. Where we sit back in our own box and try and sustain the lead and try and soak up pressure. But maybe it was just two teams who were petrified of losing because they know what was at stake, and I think that might have been the problem. I think it's a much bigger derby than people realise. I think you've got to support one or either Sunderland or Newcastle to understand what that derby means, or play in it, or have some sort of association with it. But yeah, I think in terms of the Champions League, it could be, and you're right. I think you could be right in the sense of European teams don't really know how to play against Newcastle. That might be it. It might be it could be a number of things. It could be that that music, the lights, the Newcastle St James's Park under the lights. It could be that gets the players going a little bit more. I hope it is. I hope that's not the case, because you play for Newcastle, you've got to be up. You play for any team, you've got to be up for every game. Doesn't matter if it's a EFL Cup tie away at Grimsby or a Wednesday night under the lights at PSG in the Champions League. You've got to have the same desire, and you've got to have the same ambition to go and win the game. So yeah, I would hope that it's not to do with being psyched up for the European games rather than the Premier League games, but is that the modern player? I don't know. It could well be. How many times have we seen players who shine in certain stages? I mean, you look at Marcus Rashford as an example. You look at what he's doing for Barcelona, and he plays on the big occasions, but he didn't necessarily want to run back, did he? A lot of the time, does he choose his games? And it goes back to, and that was my criticism of Gordon earlier on, is you think about how well he's doing in the Champions League, but he's not doing it in the Premier League. So, but that's something for Eddie to try and figure out. That's something that he needs to look at and try and identify where the problem is, because I mean, if it is mentally, then that's a problem.
I'm assuming you have Sunderland friends or family, maybe, or of course, people from Sunderland. Are they still talking about or give you a hard time about they are winning? Mm-hmm. What did they say about the reaction of this win? Expected, surprise?
Well, the Sunderland fans, or
Yes.
I mean, I've spoken to a couple. I mean, I think they obviously said they deserved it, as you can imagine. I probably agreed with them in saying that they probably wanted it that little bit more. As I mentioned earlier, I do think that it was because of the Stadium of Light. You know, they had the fans on them. I think I've got a lot of confidence when it goes to St James's Park, we'll beat them, because I think we'll have that same. You know, even though they've won, I think we've got a horrible stat against Sunderland recently at St James's Park over the last 4 or 5 occasions they've won. I don't think we've beaten them since 2010. I think that was the last time we beat them at St James's Park in the league.
Wow.
That was at the game I was at when Chris Hughton was manager, so that's quite worrying. And you know, that's the problem, is that it feels like, you know, we just haven't, you know, we obviously got the FA Cup win last year, or not last year, sorry, the year before in the FA Cup, but it feels like they've got bragging rights still at the moment, especially in the league. And you know, they were very happy. They believe they deserved it. They believe that, you know, they're going to finish above us. So it's not particularly nice at the moment talking to a Sunderland fan, because they are very much happy about what's going. Rightly so. Listen, they're performing well, aren't they? They're doing well. You know, it looks like they're going to secure their place in the Premier League this season. So yeah, but difficult to say congratulations, because as I mentioned, I don't think they were that great on the day. I think they just had that little bit of momentum, but you know, they were very happy.
I'm very happy. I'm very, very happy that Voltmada really get past this. I thought he will be away for a while, but he scored against Chelsea great goals. And he's awake from that nightmare. It was really a nightmare. Yeah. All right. Simon, maybe I would like to, maybe you give me some, any tactical change, or you want to speak about tactics in Eddie Howe? Because when we follow the press conference and before game, after game, to be honest, I'm not that. Usually I used to. I know I don't have much time, but usually I translate what Eddie Howe says, and boss didn't talk about it. But since a while, I didn't do that because I feel it's repeating. We get better. We have chances. It's nothing really you can buy, really. So what you think you can change, or you want to talk about tactics? And also the second part is why there is no much difference. I know there is injuries and maybe tough times or heavy competition, but we didn't see that kind of changing the formation, big change on the squad tactics.
Yeah, I mean, from a tactical perspective, I think every Newcastle fan will agree that it's not particularly enjoyable to watch when you go 1-0 up to suddenly sit back. I mean, I have to say, I thought the Chelsea game, I think if Reece James doesn't score that free kick, we win that game. I think, you know, Chelsea had nothing in the first half. I think Reece James scored the free kick, I think, what was it, 2-3 minutes into the second half? You know, I feel like we've been a little bit unlucky with situations like that. It's a bit like the Sunderland game. I know I keep talking about the Sunderland game, but, you know, Voltemada scored an own goal on, was it the 46th, 47th minute? You know, that's Eddie Howe's team talk for out the window. He's saying we've then got to think about doing something new, because it's not like he probably said at half time that Sunderland was keep it 0-0 for 10-15 minutes, and then we can maybe make changes about, you know, their legs might be starting to go. Because if you think about that Sunderland game, I mean, Sunderland did exactly what I've just said we shouldn't do, and they sat back for the rest of the half and let us have the ball. So, you know, and the Chelsea game was the same. We went 2-0 up. He probably said keep it keep it tidy, keep it secure. Just do not concede in the first 15 minutes. Try and just keep them out for as long as you can, and then we can start to build up again and maybe go for that third. When it goes 2-1, it's a different game. That you have to, and that's the problem I think that Eddie Howe's probably got, is that, those 2 goals, they changed the course because of how quickly they were. Where it's been, and again, I highlight these 2 games again, the most concerning was the Brentford and West Ham, because as you mentioned earlier about showing respect, that's probably what we have done too much this season. And we haven't seen enough of that arrogance that we had last season or the year before, where we would, we would go to, Everton. The game against Everton was our best away performance, wasn't it? And
the only win, I think.
Yeah, the only win.
Away.
And we did it in style as well. We did it by beating them by 4-1. So I don't know. It just feels like that. It feels like there's a bit of mentality thing, which is probably where the concern comes in. It feels like St James's Park is a safe place for these players to play, and it feels like away from home. But then again, we should never have lost the game at Man United. We should never have lost that game against Manchester United. They had nothing again. We've played against, I think about Chelsea, Sunderland and Manchester United. All 3 teams had nothing really, if I'm being honest with you. They had nothing. So it's not like we've been under the cosh for those 3 games and we've been absolutely taken apart. Or, you got to hold your hands up and accept that. We've been quite unlucky. If Lewis Hall hits the bar in the second half, if that goes in, I think we go on and win that game, because we were all over them. United had that one effort on goal from Dorgu, which went in the net, and then they had 1 or 2 chances, but we battered them for the majority of the game. And it was the same at Chelsea. We should have been 4-0 up. Voldemar should have had a hat trick, and so I do feel a little bit for Eddie, because I just think some of these goals have they've probably changed the whole. Not the Dorgu goal, but the Voldemar own goal, and I think the Reece James free kick has just probably thrown his plans out the window from his half-time team talk. So I've got a little bit of sympathy for him in that respect. But in terms of tactical,
the thing about tactical, the number 10 position, I think it's maybe starting to be dead on most of the teams. I'm not really sure, because I'm not really watching all the games, but I still want a number 10. I see in Newcastle, because I think this is what we need. Why we are with these we are not having this kind of players to play this modern style of Eddie Howe. We still have not that quality comparing to the top teams. So why are we killing this number 10 position, which approved to be by before with the previous player, that it's important role to have, the playmaker, the pass before strike, because we obviously see Lake now in this kind of chance creation.
Yeah, it feels like Bruno was probably pushed in, not necessarily an out number 10, but it felt like when Eddie made that.
Sorry to interrupt. I know, but Bruno is very far, have filled with defense roles. So
yeah, I think Tonali got moved back, didn't he? They did that switch. I think Bruno was always a sitter, and then he obviously put Tonali as the holding last season, and then it pushed Bruno up a little bit further. And it feels like Bruno, if you think about the goal against Nottingham Forest, think about his goal against Fulham, it feels like he's being a little bit more proactive in that area. The problem that you've got, and as you're right in saying, is that Bruno is he's a bit like a Bruno Fernandes, isn't he? Where he goes, he runs, he sort of wants the ball everywhere. That's the thing. He wants, as you just mentioned, he wants to take it from deep. He wants to be everywhere. He wants to dictate the game. He wants to have an influence on the game in any chance he gets. So you're right in saying, he's not that natural number 10. but it feels like that was probably Eddie Howe's message to him to say you can move a little bit further up and Tonali can sit deeper and Joe Linton can kind of be that enforcer, being that sort of box-to-box player. But it's difficult, isn't it? Because I was saying that Eddie Howe, that we've got arguably one of the best three, probably one of the best midfielders in Europe on their day, in Joe Linton, Tonali and Bruno Guimaraes. I mean, last season they were phenomenal. And I think if you ask most Premier League teams, even Liverpool, they would probably say they would take them three over their three. So, you know, it feels like Jacob Ramsey. I thought he might be that player that would come in and be that sort of, not necessarily number 10, but be a little bit more mobile. You know, that's with his role was that at Villa. He used to sort of work in those gaps, those sort of channels between the striker and the left winger. He used to sort of dictate play in that position. Yeah, it feels like we might need to get Elliot Anderson back. That feels like the most logical move.
I agree, but same price, not more, not double.
Yeah.
So it will be a waste of that financial fair play, because we sell them because of this reason, and I think it's very stupid to buy them double price. All right, time. The great impact, Simon. Okay, now the main topic.
Yeah.
The main topic of the show. Last year, about same time, Paul Mitchell. No, wait for it. Remember Paul Mitchell when the transfer? I'm not really exact in the dates, but I believe it was December, January. There was a press conference, and all that saga starts, and the attack and this Cold War starts before the transfer window, and we see what happens. That I'm here for supporting. I'm not going to repeat. Everybody know what happens. All right, now back to the day. Ross Wilson and David Hopkinson supported Eddie Howe, unlike Paul Mitchell that time. And of course, we're excited for transfer window in the winter, because obviously we need the players. Some players will be out of contract, especially the defense line.
Yeah.
Okay, but what happened during the fuss about the performance and the results? Some articles appears, and here in Saudi we call Craig Hope. It's a funny joke, and Craig Hope is a friend of Eddie Howe, and he leaks him everything. He's the sound of Eddie Howe or something like that. With all respect to Mr. Craig Hope, talking about that. Okay, in dates, I try to be specific here. And on 4th of December, David Hopkinson speaks about talking about stadium, that it's going to be later. Should be focused on it now, because we can increase the revenue without the stadium, something like that. And the vision of the Saudi investment PIF for 2030, the whole topic. And 20 days later, Howe conference speaks about that the stadium situation in limbo. We should settle this now. So what was the 99.99%? I will not be here. So what is that? Why there is talking? This should be between them. Why it's appear in the surface? Your view, Sam.
Yeah, I think he probably got asked a question, and I think Eddie probably just answered it in probably an honest way. I don't think there was anything to read between the lines, in my opinion. I don't know what your opinion is, but I don't think it was I don't think it was a dig at the board in any way. I don't think it was a dig at David Hopkinson. I don't think it was a sly jab to say, we need it. The reason Newcastle haven't been performing this season has got nothing to do with the new stadium. So I don't think it was anything but maybe just a response to a question. I think he's probably it might be just a comment. It might be just a way of just settling expectation on when the stadium's going to be, because it feels like it's going to be a long way off. I think it's a bit deeper than just the money side. I think it's also the fact that I think there's been a lot of concerns raised by the council to develop St James's Park into a bigger stadium because of the residential around there. You then have Lees's Park, which is supposedly where the new site is going to be and where the new stadium is going to be built. But that's had problems with, again, the council and the impact it can have on the nature there. So Eddie probably knows all this, and he's probably thinking, by the time we get a new stadium, he might not be here. And it's very true. And it could be that, I don't want to speak too soon, and I really hope this isn't the case. But I mean, if Thomas Tuchel doesn't do well for England next summer, I think they will come knocking, the FA, unfortunately. I think they will approach Eddie. So I'm not saying that's the reason he's come out with that comment, but it might just be the fact that he knows this stadium is 3 to 5 years off.
All right, but okay. Let's say.
Do you think it was Do you think he was making a bit of a jab at the board?
Well, yes, I think not. I think he's not because we used every new guy come, every new person in management came. Things starts like this. Newcastle fans, we are so microscopic everything, because all start, and we say the same about Ashworth, Paul Mitchell. Obviously, David Hopkinson and Ross stay more professional, and of course they don't want to repeat mistakes. But you said it could be a question, but usually in the clubs, either the coach answer the same answer of the club, not answering different answer than his boss, the CEO. Because even if he's not convinced, but they need to agree on some stuff, because all the media will gonna pick this stuff. So I think it's just starting some kind of guessing the testing the water or something like that. Yeah. Okay. Any comment?
No. I mean, I just hope that's not the case. I mean, you could be right. I mean, I hope not. I mean, I don't think it's a secret that Eddie and Paul Mitchell didn't get on, and I think there was obviously issues there. It felt different in the summer with, as you just mentioned, about both Ross Wilson and David Hopkinson backing Eddie in the summer. But yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting what plays out. I mean, if there's further noise coming out of the football club with regards to this, then it could be that you are right. But I just hope there's not. I just hope it was an answer Eddie Howe gave to a question. That's all I'm hoping for, anyway.
Another analysis that maybe I'm just speaking, thinking out loud, that maybe David Hopkinson or Ross Wilson have some says things maybe Eddie Howe doesn't like, and he speak also something he shouldn't speak much about it, because the fans hear to Eddie Howe. First one they hear is the coach. So when he's saying it's limbo, it's weird to say it should be close to, not the same, but at least close what David Hopkinson says. Or maybe this is indirect because the budget of the transfer window, which gonna come at the end of the show, talking about the transfer rumors. So we'll see. But that's really interesting, and we're gonna follow, of course, this. Okay. Do you see any glimpse of a change with? I know it's recent position for Hopkinson and Ross. Did you notice any change? Or a value they add in these few months they came?
No, probably it probably takes a little bit longer. I don't think we'll see that for a little while. I think that it all comes down. I think Ross Wilson's going to be the man that's probably going to get judged the most because of his impact in terms of transfers. It feels like he gave the green light to Eddie in terms of the players he wanted in the summer, because I think Eddie's has been an admirer of both Ramsey and Elanga for quite a while, even before Ross Wilson was in situ. So it feels like those players have always been part of the plan, even before Ross Wilson came in, and Ross obviously gave it the green light. Whether he probably didn't have much to debate, to be honest with you, because he had only been in there for, I don't know how long he'd been in there for, but it wasn't long enough to maybe cast. And also he knew Anthony Elanga, didn't he, from Nottingham Forest, so he probably, he understood what he was about. But I think it will prove. I think probably next summer is when we'll see what happens, because then Ross Wilson, both David and Ross will be in place for a year, and it'll be interesting to see what changes are made. It feels like there's a lot of stalling at Newcastle on these sort of big projects. Whether it be the stadium, I think the change in the club badge that was being discussed. I haven't seen anything recently about that and what those changes are going to be. But it will be interesting what happens next summer in terms of what Ross Wilson's impact will be, because will he, we talk about a transfer strategy, we talk about a playing style, all this, will he align with what Eddie Howe wants? Because he did it a certain way at Forest. And it'll be interesting to see if he puts his methods in at Newcastle. And it'll be interesting to see if Eddie agrees with it, because, it didn't work out that well with Paul Mitchell. But also Paul Mitchell didn't do himself any favours, did he, when he came in? He came in and I think he criticised the last couple of transfer windows that Eddie Howe and Dan Ashworth had been part of. So, he didn't really help his case. It feels like Ross Wilson's probably kept his head down a little bit more. But it'll be interesting to see. In terms of value added, I think the sole focus at the moment is on Eddie Howe and those players. I think it'll be difficult to judge what these two do until they're in situ for a little bit longer, in my opinion.
All right. In your opinion, why does the Peter Silverstone left the club?
Supposedly, from what I've heard, is that it's to do with David Hopkinson's assessment of the club and where it's going. He obviously felt that more revenue could have been generated. I'm nowhere near professional in terms of I don't have enough knowledge on that side of football to sort of give my real opinion on. They probably felt that more commercial revenue could have been generated since Pete Silverstone was in place. So, which is surprising, because it felt like that we had a big deal with Adidas. We've obviously got Seller on the front of the shirts. So it feels like and I think we did a deal with Visa, if I'm not mistaken, over the summer. So from an outside, from someone who doesn't understand that part of football well enough, but I still felt that we were making some strides in the commercial game, but it feels like David Hopkinson wants a little bit more. So, but I think has he gone to Juventus? I don't know if I've read that right. I don't know if he has gone there.
Yeah, I believe so. I read something like that.
If he's a big football club.
Yeah. In addition, I met Peter Silverstone a while ago for a meeting regarding fans in Saudi and what they can do, and we do. And we explain a lot of stuff that we need, which nothing been done by the sponsors.
Yep.
Especially the Saudi ones here in Saudi. Of course, not in England, but here in Saudi. Yep. And with the, it was a good meeting with the promises that we'll do some restructure and stuff. But that was 2 years ago, about 2 years ago, January 2023. Anyway, nothing happened. I keep follow up. Nothing happened as well.
Oh, okay.
When David Hopkinson assigned, I sent a message.
Oh, yeah.
To David Hopkinson, explaining some stuff. The same my demands and our fans in Saudi demands. I know maybe it's not priority, but after 5 years, I think when it's going to be a priority. After 4 years of more than 4 years of the takeover, our demands is simple. It's not that complicated. Anyway, I get a reply, very fast reply. So I was very impressed that David Hopkinson reply to me quickly. In the reply, he forwarded my email to Peter Silverstone and Lee Marshall. That we're gonna thank you for sharing this, and we're gonna talk soon. I just came like that. So I waited like 2 months or 3 months, 2 months, I believe. I make like a reminder, gentle reminder, and nothing I receive.
Oh no.
So right. I hope my message was nice, but I hope it doesn't have a thing to do with Peter Silverstone. Anyway. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So that's for the okay, Peter Silverstone. Okay. Simon. Okay. Now, would like to speak about transfers. The rumors, a lot of players being mentioned. Sometimes it's boring because we notice every window a lot of names, and a lot of them, or 90% of them, not coming. Before I mention names, let's hear what you hear that a possible interest from Newcastle and the player, because obviously we're gonna sign some.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see what the value of player we can get in terms of, how much do we have to spend. We obviously spent big in the summer. You think about the money that we spent on Ramsey, Elanga, Voltemada, Thiaw. I know we obviously got the money from Isaac. So from a fair play perspective, it feels like we're in the green still. From what I understand, it feels like we've got some money to spend. The difficulty is that where do you apply that money? What's going to be the priority? Because it looks like it's going to be the defence. It feels like when we lost. I've actually thought that it might be a good idea to bring Matt Targett back off loan, because it's just quite evident that Dan Burn can't play at left back. That was a big problem for us when we went on that difficult run. We're still on that difficult run, but it was highlighted for sure when he played against West Ham and Brentford. He really struggled in that left back position. So, it might be that we need to get another fullback. Trippier's injured. It feels like we can't play Tino Livramento and Lewis Hall every game. It feels like their bodies can't quite handle it. So to play Wednesday, Saturday, Tuesday, Sunday, whatever it is, feels like that's probably a stretch too far for these two. And it is for most players in the league, the demands that are set in terms of the physicality level that you play Premier League and Champions League football. I mean, the only name I've seen linked with Newcastle for a while is a player called Smith from AZ Alkmaar, who's the young midfielder. But I haven't seen that many players linked with Newcastle, and I think this is a difficult one this window, because I don't know who you bring in, because you can't bring in a centre forward because we've got Wissa and Voltemada. We've got 4 wide players in Gordon, Barnes, Murphy and Alanga. You can't bring in another wide player after spending 50 million on Alanga, 55 million. We've just spent 40 million on Jacob Ramsey in midfield. You could be right, as I think we said, it could be that number 10 role we focus on. It could be that we need that creative midfielder to give us that little bit of edge going forward. But the most likely, in my opinion, is probably a defender who can support the injuries that we've got at the moment. But I don't know who that is, because if you get all of our back 4 fit, Botman, TL, Lewis Hall, Tino Livramento, it's going to take a very, 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 very good player to get in ahead of them. And they come at a big cost. And would that player be happy to sit on the bench at Newcastle when all those players are fit? I don't know. So I think this is a really difficult one at the moment for this win.
Brilliant take, Simon. Can you repeat the player name you mentioned that been shine a lot? Or?
He's Smith. He's a young boy, 19 from AZ Alkmaar.
AZ Alkmaar. Smith.
Yeah, don't know a lot about him, but he's highly regarded in Holland. Plays for the under-21s.
And why he close to Newcastle, you think? Because
I don't know.
Rumours or?
Rumours, yeah. I think more than likely rumours. Newcastle have always been, we've been linked to sort of young players. It feels like Eddie Howe wants sort of that profile of player. He wants a young player because, Eddie, we all know how good of a coach Eddie is. So it feels like he wants, young players to coach, to build up, to develop. But
do you think he will play quickly in the club? Because we notice we got some good players and young players, but they are being given away to other teams.
That's the problem. That's the big problem. I mean, I've even forgotten their names, but there's been a few the last couple of years we've brought in and we put on loan straight away, and they haven't made it back. So. We did it with, I think there's the boy Kjol, if I've pronounced that right, the young Aussie boy. He's supposedly meant to be a brilliant player, but, other than a few pre-season games, he hasn't played for Newcastle. So, we've got all these amazing talents, that we get, that we have, but, they just don't get the game time. Could this be the same? I don't know, potentially. But you never know. It could be another Lewis Miley. So, it could be that, if he gets his chance and he takes it, then great. But I think at the moment that's purely speculation.
Goalkeeper situation. We saw all the games. When Bob did mistake, no, play Ramsdale. And when Ramsdale play and make mistakes, no, bring back Bob. So we are in this back and forth. So and as our friend Ryan, he says we need a good goalkeeper.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that. I think we do need a better goalkeeper. I think Ramsdale is very good with his feet. I have to say, I think he's changed us a little. I think he's had a positive impact on the team, because if you look at the way he plays with the ball, and he's very confident. You can tell the back four, the defence like to play. They don't mind playing it back to him. When Pope's in the team, you can tell they're a bit more hesitant to play the ball back to him because of Pope's kicking ability and his ability with his feet overall. The only thing I would say with Ramsdale is I've been a little bit concerned with his ability, shot stopping, but also from corners and free kicks. It feels like I don't know what you think, but it feels like when I watch him, he stays on the line the whole time. It's very rare he comes out and punches or collects the ball. And if you look at Ramsdale, he's just quite he doesn't. He looks quite small, doesn't he? He doesn't look big. He doesn't look like he's going to command the area. But what he does give you is incredible.
They look like afraid from being injured.
Yeah,
Maybe.
yeah, that's it. Yeah, and I feel for Pope a little bit because he's been a brilliant servant for the football club, but you know he's had a bit of a tough time this season. He's obviously made some big mistakes, and it just doesn't help that he's really poor with his distribution. You know, and that puts Newcastle under a lot of pressure when we play. Because if you notice with Pope, he kicks the ball out a lot, and the problem is now the long throws back. You know, it's a problem. It's a problem. So, you know, it's a really tough one, isn't it? Because you've got two keepers who polar opposite. You know, so I don't think it will be this winter, but I think we should go in for a new goalkeeper next summer. Definitely.
Burnley game tomorrow. What do you think? And what God forbid if we lose? Do you think this could change a lot of things?
Yeah, I think if we lose tomorrow, then yeah, I think it's a big problem. I think yeah, Burnley away. I mean, we can't lose tomorrow night. Can't. I mean, we have to. I mean, even a draw, I think, creates a little, depending on what the performance is. But I do think, unless we win tomorrow night, Eddie, it's going to be pressure again, and that's the problem. And it's really sad to see in a way because I'm such a big fan of his, and I think, you know, for what he did last season, for bringing the trophy to St James's Park, you know, he's got hero status. You know, he's a legend, and you know, it's just sad to see how I'm surprised actually how much criticism he's getting. I have to say from a certain segment of Newcastle fans because I think he's a top draw coach, brilliant manager, but unfortunately it's a results driven business, and you know he needs to start picking up some points on the road because you know it's going to be tough for him.
Simon McKie, we would like to thank you for coming and thank you, much appreciated for answering all the questions, and especially the heavy one with really nice, great answers, and we are happy very much with this. I was talking with my friend today, he asking me about you, where we can find you, as apparently you are not with X platform, I believe, which is...
No, but I will be getting it, don't worry.
All right, please let us know when you do that.
I will
really appreciate Simon your coming. It's an honor. Anything you would like to add at the end?
No, that's been brilliant. No, thank you for having me on your show. It's always a pleasure.
always welcome سايمون. طبعا كان معنا الصحفي سيمون ماكيه. نشكره على أجوبته الجميلة لأسئلتنا الساخنة يعني الصعبة. بكرة إن شاء الله نيوكاسل مع بيرلي بإذن الله. ممكن نعمل يعني حلقة بسيطة على جاكو. نشكركم للمتابعة وتصبحون على خير. Thanks for watching. See you in next time Newcastle with الوليد بودكاست.